Hi my friend, in this video we're going to be making analog house music drums inspired by Todd Edwards and Blessed Madonna song F What You Heard. And we're going to find out if we can do this in under 30 minutes by using the 80-20 rule of house music drum production. What you're listening to right now is a song we'll be working on. And what you're looking at right now is the Ableton project file that we'll be working on. In particular, we're going to focus on this drum group right here. We're going to focus on going in order of the layers as I actually built it out, so you can follow along when you're recreating drums like this. The song was definitely made using kind of like analog, jammy, maybe even a DAW setup, but we're going to be doing things a little bit differently with some pretty interesting features inside of Ableton Live 12. All in all, this did take me about 30 minutes to recreate using the techniques that you're going to learn in this video, so make sure you stick around to the end of the video because we'll be doing a full recap of the 80-20 rule so you can apply what you learn in this video to your own tunes. All in all, also, this song took just about 5 or 6 hours for me to complete. As you can see, it's been mixed, mastered, arranged, and it's completely ready to be used in DJ sets or to be sent off to labels. So if you want help finishing songs faster just like this, I've made you a free bundle of templates, samples, and special bonuses that I use to completely finish one song like this every single week. Just visit the link that's on screen now or in the description to grab your copy of the Ultimate Song Finishing Toolkit for free. And if you want to take things to the next level, you can also find a link to this video's project files as well as 20 other project files with new project files being added every single week in the description as well. So with that said, let's jump into this. Alright. So let's kick things off by just having a listen to the drums that I've recreated here on their own. And let's flip over to the reference to kind of have a listen to the reference here. Reference, and then ours. So one of the key things that you might have noticed right away there is what I always do is make sure that the reference track is in the project file here. So I've added it in here on its own track called reference, then turned it off, and I dropped the decibels by 6, and then build everything to the reference track. Once you have this turned off here, what I've done is mapped the S key on my keyboard to the solo key. This way I can flick back and forth between what I've made and what I'm working on and the reference so that I can really use my ears and kind of pay attention to the reference as I'm building it out. Another thing that I do like to do is you'll see here that there's this arrangement track up at the top. I like to go through this real quick and use empty MIDI clips to create the arrangement so that I can easily jump between the song to find out where I want to work on certain things. So when I'm building out the drums, I'll usually be working in the intro section, then I'll copy that over to say the sub area, add in the bass, etc., etc. Right now we're going to focus on the drums, and this is definitely a different style, I would say, than if you listen to this track. It definitely has like almost like a DAW-less hardware vibe. It almost sounds like these two were in the studio together with a bunch of cool like drum machines and synthesizers, and we're just kind of working on this tune. There's a lot of like moving, jammy kind of vibes to some of it. So this is a different take on it. This is not a hardware version. This is going to be using Ableton and some of the cool Ableton tricks. So let's dive into it. So the first thing that I usually work on here is the drums. So I'm going to go ahead and just turn everything off and we'll just focus in on the drums. So what I'm going to do is kind of give you the idea here. So what we're going to first get down is the pattern. So let's have a look and listen to the kick here. So you can hear it's basically the classic 4-on-the-4 pattern, but there's this cool little almost kind of stuttery fill kind of thing near the end, which is super interesting and cool. And the way that I just got that was just listening back to the reference, but again, listening to more of the intro. So if we listen to the intro, or when the kick comes in, boom, just like that. And then the next thing that I like to get down after I've got the pattern is the sound. And so for the sound, what I did is a pretty cool trick in Ableton 12. You can see here, I found a spot where the kick was by itself, and then I just chopped it so it was alone, and then doing Command E to the left and the right of that kick, and then Command J so that it's all in itself. So if you look over here, if you pull back on that sample, it's the whole track. I wanted it isolated by Command J or pressing Consolidate. So that way what I could do is click on this and then do two things. So the first thing is I dragged this kick into this drum rack here. So I have something called the R kick, which is just a little kind of rack that I've made, and you just drop the kick directly into this simpler here, and there's a bunch of quick knobs to kind of isolate that drum a lot more in case there's some kind of like synths or hi-hats or anything like that. You can set it up so that it's nice and isolated. So that sounds like this. So you can hear we got that kick all by itself, which sounds pretty awesome. And then the next thing after that, once having the kick in, what I like to do is use that kick that I just stole from the actual song to build a small little library of samples that I can also layer in, or try to get like a one shot from the library so that it sounds a lot more high quality. It's not being extracted from the song. And the way you do that in Ableton 12, which is really cool, is once you have that kick isolated, you can right click on it and press show in browser, and it's going to show the kick that you've isolated here. So you can hear here there's more hi-hats and some stuff going on in this sample compared to when I used that rack there. And you press this little button here, and it's going to show you a bunch of sounds that are similar in like texture and all that to the one that you've isolated from the actual track, which is super cool. You can hear there's actually a little bit of like the bass synth in there as well, so that's why it's good to drop into something like this, and you can grab this in the project files as well. Just using the filter frequency and setting the filter frequency to an envelope instead of just a normal filter filter cutoff helps isolate the kick a lot more. So the idea is using that similar sound feature to build up a small little library of similar sounds. And then the idea is pretty simple. Like what I would do in this instance is grab like a spot in the loop here, let's say, and then flick back and forth, just like that. And the idea is in this drum rack, I have this selector, so I can use this to increase the semitone, so it's going to move the note from here to here to here. Or you can jump in here and grab, if you press on the piano roll like this, it'll grab all of them, and you can, as you're flicking back and forth, just kind of audition. And I always try to do it in time so you can almost kind of hear your kick going into that, in that song almost. One thing that I do too is this, well, you'll see it in the template as well, is this is always already set up. So I have like the kick, the clap, all this ready with like the most common MIDI notes. So I'm not having to actually punch in the 1, 2, 3, 4 or anything like that. It's already there ready to go, and I'm actually just moving on to the sound. In this case, what I did do is a little bit of a trick. So I have 2 layers. I found a nice kick from Rocket Powered Sound, and then I have like the stolen kick, and I've layered them over top of each other. And let's have a look. So the main thing that I did here is, what was it, this one? Okay, yeah, I basically just layered them over top of each other, and then that way there's like kind of that fullness and like higher quality from the one shot, and then a little bit more of like the texture coming in from the there's more texture coming in from the stolen kick, so you're kind of getting a lot closer to the end result sound there. Other than that, what I'm doing is running this into a drum bus, adding a bit of saturation, removing some of the highs, and this boom function I think is really cool, especially when you're using a stolen kick. You can add this boom function to add a bit of subbiness to the low end. Really helps make it sound a lot fuller. So if we listen to it with, and then without, with, adds like some more presence and fullness and makes it sound, I think, a lot more professional and full, I would say. The next thing that I worked on after that, so basically, actually, the next thing I decided to work on after that was the claps. What I recommend doing is kind of using your ear to decide what are the most important elements. With drums, it's usually kick first, and then after that, it might be open hi-hat or like snares or claps. Use your own discretion there. The idea is to build the most core important elements first, and then add in all those, like, sometimes like maybe the hi-hats and little toms and stuff like that aren't as important. They're adding to the groove. I feel like those should come in later. First, work on the core elements. So for me, the next core element was these claps. So let's have a listen to that. And so what I did there is, again, the template was already set up to be on the 2 and the 4 because snares and claps are usually just always on this position. And then what I've done is, once the pattern was done, then just layered in a couple sounds here. So second step is always sound design. And then I actually forgot to mention, but the third step is always volumes. You can do some extra crazy processing, like say I threw that drum bus on the kick there, but the main thing is like adjusting the level by flicking back and forth. Adjusting the level while doing that reference flicking trick to get it as close as possible to the actual reference. That's going to be that kind of trick to get it super professional sounding without having to do anything too crazy with processing. But then in terms of that second step, which is to pick the sound, what I did do is I found another spot here. So if I solo it, I think it was here. So in like the arrangement, there's this almost like little fill drop. So if you listen. So I found that as a nice little opportunity to steal both that clap and then the hi-hat. And so did basically the exact same things. Consolidated each one of these and then did this, dropped it directly into this drum rack here. So this is the clap actually taken from the song. In this instance, since the clap is all by itself, it was a perfect way to grab it. And then instead of the similar sound function in my template, I have a bunch of clap sounds that I went through that I like to use quite a bit. And so I just layered in 2 different clap sounds. So let's see. So it's this one. This is from the tune. There's maybe even a little bit of snare in there, it kind of almost sounds like. And then I just added this other one to add it in a bit of more high end to it. So that way it sounds very, very similar. In terms of any processing, this is the standard channel strip rack that I have on everything except for like the kick and the bass. Basically, it's just removing a bunch of the lows, 200 hertz and below, almost always getting rid of that so that it's making room for the low end to take care of the low end, so the kick and the bass, and then shelving out a bit of the highs. Shelving out the highs instead of always doing the low pass filter is a way to more naturally remove some of the highs. Sometimes the low pass filter can sound very intense, and that could be intentionally great, but sometimes it's nice to just lower some of the highs with a shelf like this. And then we'll go into this as it comes up, but then I'm just adding a bit of saturation to fill out the sound a little bit, add a little bit of grit and texture. And this is just using Ableton Saturator. I've just added it to a rack like this so that it's less visual. And I'm just using the one knob to quickly like use my ear, dial it in, mix as I go, and move on to the next step. But again, the main thing after that was flicking back and forth, trying to get the volume correct. The next element that I added is this snare sound. So I usually like to reinforce claps with a snare sound. So let's have a look and listen to that. Solo the snare. Add it back in. So just add some like fullness to the snare. As you can see, if we look at the pattern, it's just playing it on the same positions 2 and 4. And again, the template's set up like that so that anytime I'm working on a track, that's already ready to go because it almost happens every time. And then I have this rack with a bunch of different sounds. So again, as I was flicking through, I was either using that selector or just grabbing it like this. Just like that, as listening and then flicking back and forth by pressing the S key to be able to find the right sound, and then simply doing that same technique, flicking back and forth like that to get the volumes correct. Because then in terms of any sound design, there's really not a lot. We're just automatically removing some of the lows. And then I'm using this one knob width plugin here to add a little bit of width. Usually I like to make the claps kind of more wide, like push to the left and right. But in this instance, I decided to do that with the snare. And this is just a free plugin from Polyverse Wider that I definitely recommend you getting. And then I've just mapped the core knobs to an Ableton rack here, so I can just use this one knob here to dial it in. But main thing again is the volumes there. The next element that I added in was the closed hi-hat. So let's go ahead and take a look and listen to that. So all it is just basically same thing. Well, not the same thing. It's on the offbeat. So this is a very typical hi-hat and open hi-hat pattern. So again, I set up my template so it's already set up like this, so I don't have to fool around with that at all and like punch it in and waste time. It's all about going as quick as possible. That's how I'm able to finish songs so quickly, is with templates like this. In terms of the sound, like I showed earlier, I snatched that from the actual tune. So this is actually just from the actual tune. This is a rare instance where you can actually find it so isolated in the tune, so I did take advantage of that. And then you could also use it to find a similar sound as well by doing that same feature that I showed you with the kick. In this instance, I was happy to just use it like this. The kick is a lot stronger and like more important of a like a element to the track. So I do like to reinforce it with a one shot. In this instance, I found the hat to be fine to just snatch like this. Main thing again is flicking back and forth, then listening to the hi-hat, then our hi-hat. So at this point, you can hear that the hi-hat they use is a lot quieter. And at this point, I was kind of taking a little bit of creative liberties as I'm building up these recreations. I like to start with the idea of recreating as closely as possible, but then I'll slowly let my own taste kind of redirect things so that I can actually slowly evolve it into its own track instead of just creating a recreation for recreation's sake. I like to try to get some creativity in there and slowly evolve it into something I can actually use to release, which is the idea. And then any processing here, we're just removing some of the lows naturally. That's it. Main thing was the volumes. I think even in this instance, I think that's good. I like it a little bit louder. Then the next element, actually, if we take a look, yeah, so this is a really cool track in that like the hats slowly evolve. So the first bit of the arrangement, it just sounds like this. And then after a few bars, it adds this like kind of a little bit more of a groove like this. Here. Cool. So if you can hear that there. So it's basically, I just added it so it's like reinforcing some notes and it's adding this little like kind of cool sound. I just simply what did I do here? So like I found it by like flicking back and forth in terms of getting the pattern correct, and then I just use this, like I also have a bunch of hat sounds that I like already baked into my template here, and then I just found one that kind of sounded good to overlay on top, and then just use the volumes on that to add that in. Nothing too crazy there. And then after a few bars of that with that cool little extra groove, then the next thing that I noticed that comes in is this open hi-hat. So let's take a look and listen to that. So you can see here it's on the offbeat again. So again, I set up the open hi-hat on my template so that you can easily just move on to instead of having to punch in each note. Main thing here is then choosing the right sound. So I just was flicking back and forth. So a little different, but I really liked how it sounded. So it's close-ish. And then the main thing again was setting the volumes, and then any processing, we're just moving some of the lows. I did adjust something here. So this is a transient shaper from Kilohertz. It's also free, so I definitely would recommend checking it out. And again, I've set it up my my channel strip that loads onto every audio and MIDI track to have the core knob set up, so I don't have to open it up and load it each time. We're adding a bit of attack, so it's kind of making that first transient, the first sound of the hit, a little bit more punchy and stick out more. And then we're bringing in the sustain so that the sound trails off less, so it kind of makes it sound tighter. And then we're using a bit of this width plugin to kind of push it to the left and right, make it more stereo. It's kind of just how I heard that sounding more stereo or pushed around a bit more in the reference track. So that was the idea there. And then other than that, I'll quickly go through, that's kind of the main core things. And other than that, there was like a few other parts here. So I'll just kind of show this off. This little break. Just like a different pattern here, almost like a trap beat style pattern with similar sounds. Added in this little bit here. It's like a little drum break, weird little loop thing. And then this little, this is actually kind of cool. Yeah, won't go too into depth with any of this. If you want to check out the project files, you can. And then also like the template I used to recreate tracks that I was talking about quite a bit here, where like everything's set up with the MIDI notes ready to go and drum racks ready to go, all that kind of stuff. So you can start a new song from scratch. That's also available when you grab the project files as well. Because this is kind of the main core song of it, so I won't go too much into the rest of this. But yeah, hopefully you found that useful. And before we do a quick overview of the 80-20 rule, so you can have a nice recap of the main core things, those kind of 3 things that I was talking about, so you can apply what you learn here to your own tracks. I do want to mention that this video is sponsored by good friends over at Rocket Powered Sound. They hooked us up, in particular this kick drum that we're hearing, which is, again, like I mentioned, such a fundamental part of a drum sound, so it's important to have a library of good drum sounds. This is from their Ultimate Sample Pack, which is a sample pack made with 1,000 iconic sounds like this from like super cool drum machines and all that kind of stuff. Super useful, especially if you're doing the Simo sound feature in Ableton 12. You can grab it by checking out the link on screen now or in the description and using the code BESTFRIENDS to get 30, or whatever the code is on the screen here, to get 30% off as well. So thank you to Rocket Powered Sound for hooking up the community here. And with that said, let's jump into the 80-20 rule for this one. Hi, my friend, Matt from Best Friends Club here. And if you've been paying attention, then you probably figured out what the 80-20 rule is when it comes to building out your drums. The goal here is to get 80% of the results with only 20% of the time, energy, or effort. And because the first key to the 80-20 rule for drums is to use a reference track, we're making sure that we're effortlessly hitting 80% of a very professional sounding track. In particular, we focus on nailing the pattern, sound selection, and the volume compared to the reference track so that we keep things fast and focused as we're building out our drums. The second key of the 80-20 rule here is to mix as you go in an extremely streamlined way by only focusing on the volume as well as a simple repeatable channel strip for each track that we're adding to our drums. The third and final key is to repurpose your old project files and to build up a suite of powerful templates, Ableton racks, and one knob effects that you've personalized and curated over time. If you'd like to get a head start by downloading all the racks, templates, and all the files that you've seen me use in the Ableton project file for this video, or if you'd just like to take a closer look at any of the techniques or tracks you saw me work on in this video at your own pace, you can find a link to this video's project files on screen now and at the second link that's in the YouTube description. I'm recreating a different song from the Beatport top charts every single week and making the project files available to anyone who wants them. You'll also get access to a private Discord where you can ask me and the community questions, as well as share tracks for feedback. If you or your music are not quite ready for a shot in the arm like that, I've also made you a completely free bundle of templates, samples, and special bonuses that have helped me figure out how to completely finish one new song each and every single week. And you can grab that free Ultimate Song Finishing Toolkit by visiting the first link that's in the YouTube description here. However, if you just feel like staying on YouTube for now, that's totally fine. Save that link for later and check out this playlist of videos where I remake drums from other songs from the Beatport top charts. Or if you want to take what you've learned in this video to the next level, definitely check out this video right here.